Hello, everybody, and welcome back to OMB Reviews. I am the critic who is a cynic, and welcome back to the Good Morning Asgard edition of the Welcome to Asgard podcast, episode 499 of the Welcome to Asgard podcast. Crazy that next week we will hit episode 500. That'll be on Tuesday at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time, but it is now officially summertime for yours truly, and so I am able to now do these morning streams. Right now, just planning to do one a week, Wednesday mornings at this time, 10 a.m. Eastern to 11 a.m. Eastern. So hopefully all of my UK brethren, all of my European brethren, and also some of my American brethren who have different working schedules or are different parts of the country, this time works a little bit better for some of y'all. I'm already seeing some people that I have not seen in a little while because of those time differences. So welcome back to the channel. Today, we're going to be doing kind of a retrospect of 2024, looking at the films that I have seen, as I have not been able, because of the school year and because of just life in general, have not been able to go and record reviews for a lot of the films that I have been able to see. I've been obviously able to post my written reviews over on Critic List, but I know not everyone is either on Critic List or wants to join another platform to review movies or things like that. And so I want to go through all of those. That way we have just an official video, an official stream of all of that content. We, of course, will also do a little bit of an update on the box office. If you were watching last night's stream, it should not be anything new to y'all. But I'm actually in the process of putting together my official list of the biggest box office bombs of 2023 and the biggest box office hits of 2023 as well. Let's just say it's going to be very different than the list put forward by Tony over at Deadline by quite a bit. In fact, many of the films on his list were actually box office bombs when you take into account the actual data. So it'll be fun to poke holes in his list, poke holes in his methodology, which is always lacking in many respects. And right now, my official charting with the box office mojo numbers is complete. Now I just need to make sure that the numbers are official and complete, just to see if there's any major discrepancies between the two, because obviously they're using different metrics, they're using different sources for their data, and so there could be some differences there, and I, of course, will get that information to y'all. I'll have it in written form for geeksandgamers.com, hopefully sometime in the next couple of weeks. One of the things I'm also hesitant on with the list is that we are still waiting on some of the UK tax returns, especially for a lot of the Disney projects. For those that maybe have not been following the box office, there's been a lot of really interesting revelations, especially with some really good work going on, in fact, with a writer over at Forbes.com who's been uncovering a lot of the financial woes of Disney, the true financial woes, uncovering the tax returns on their different films and them spending well over $100 million more on so many of their actual projects. And so we take all of those things into account and very easily recognize that, oh my goodness, they're actually spending way, way, way too much on these movies, losing a lot more than initially anticipated. And let's just say it's going to be interesting to dive into those numbers. But that's why I've kind of been holding back on that list now that we're in the month of May, almost into the month of June, the month of the Sacred Heart of Jesus. We are getting close to getting most of the information that we might need, but there's still probably a couple months left, or if not to the end of the year, where more information could be dropping at any moment of us finding out more about how much Disney has actually been wasting on their films. So that right now is the agenda for today. And of course, talking with you good people in the chat, starting off, of course, with that today. Before getting further, though, please make sure you smash that like button, light up that fire button over on Odyssey, and smash the rumble button as well. We are live on all three platforms today, not live on Twitter because one of the things that Elon Musk needs to really figure out is a better way, a more easy way of getting live streams set up over on Twitter. It's one of those things you have to set up a stream individually every single time. So unless you're streaming through something like a StreamYard or an EVMux or something, you have to set it up every single time. And so that's why for my Tuesday streams, I've just set up a permanent stream starting and ending at the same time. But even that, it's again, it doesn't post automatically. You have to share the link. It's weird. It's weird. I don't like it. But enough talking from me. Let's see how y'all are doing this morning. We got Print Screen in the chat. What's going on, by the way? I did have to get the stream opened early. So let me see if I can get the first person here. Scott McKenzie was the first person here. So shout out to you, Scott McKenzie. Thank you very much for being in the chat, saying good morning, y'all. Good morning. We got Gary Banjo Sandwich Worthington. I know this time probably a lot better for you because I know that you're one of my UK brethren, saying 499 boom. 499 boom. I'm trying to get the reference there. Unless that was supposed to say 199 boom. I might be missing it. Print screen, there it is, saying good morning, everyone. The Morak, good morning. Happy summer break. Indeed, happy and blessed summer break to you as well. To anyone who is possibly off for the summer. All right, now that is looking good, let me double check and make sure the sound on the Odyssey stream is working because it was not working initially, and I had to reset it. It's going to be a lot easier. There we go. Perfect. The sound is working there. It's going to be a lot easier to stream today because I'm not going to have to be checking to see if my toddler Thor is trying to poop in the bed. He did not poop in the bed. He did not pull an Amber Turd, everybody. He is good. If you were watching last night, you'll get that reference. But essentially, he's in that potty training phase, and one night he decided to hold it until he was in the bed and then started calling my name. I happened to have been listening at the time and was able to get off the stream, or rather was able to go and check on him. And as I went in to say, hey, what's up, buddy? He was like, I gotta poop. I was like, well, thank you for telling me. Please don't ever wait until this time again. But luckily, he was fine. So for anyone wondering, don't worry. There was no poop in the bed. Let's see. The Morak, indeed. There we go. Got now in my OBS chat. So good morning. Happy summer break. Happy summer break. It's crazy. It's crazy that we're already in summertime. This past school year really just flew by. And a lot of it's probably because of the Lady Sif, right? My baby, Lady Sif, being born into the world back in September. So I know that's definitely had an impact. Now having two little ones at different stages of life has probably been a big part of it. And what's crazy to me, though, is this summer is going to be very crazy. It's going to be very, very busy. So obviously, as of right now, I am planning to go. So I cannot officially confirm. There are a lot of moving parts going on, mostly family related, of course. That could mean I won't be able to make the Dallas trip. But as of right now, I am planning to be in Dallas for the Fan Expo. Mostly I'm going to be there for that Saturday meetup. That's going to be hosted by Ripaverse and somewhat unofficially co-hosted by Geeks and Gamers Friday Night Tights. So my plan is to be there. So make sure to get your tickets for that. They're free tickets. They just want to make sure they have an idea of, one, how many people are going to show up, but also they're not going to be able to have every person in there who might want to actually go. And it's going to be at the Boozy Bird, I believe is the name of the restaurant. The name of the place in Texas. So my plan is to be in Dallas for that. That's coming up in a couple of weeks. So not this weekend, but the following weekend. So that's going to be crazy. Before then, this weekend, I'm planning a little trip down to Louisiana because I used to do shows at a little community church every summer. My family got started there. My sister got started there. I started picking up doing shows there. I did shows there for 20 years of my life. So just to give you an idea of how much time I spent there and why there's a strong connection with that place. My first solo singing roles that I ever got were from the shows that I did there. I got to end my tenure there being the lead in the show, which was, again, a very awesome way to kind of end my time there, and I definitely miss it quite a bit. They have a summer, obviously they have a show during the summer every single year, as I did it for many years, and this coming weekend, the beginning of June, is actually when they build their set. And so the last few years, whenever I've had the chance to go, I've gone down to help build the set. It always is fun to do. It's one of my favorite things to do, even when I was there. And I'm one of the few persons that's been there like almost every single year for the past 20 years to have an idea of where things go and, things like that. So my hope is to be able to do a road trip down to Louisiana this weekend. And I'm going to try the tricky thing is I'm going to try to bring Thor with me. I'm going to try to bring my toddler with me. So that'll be interesting to see how to, get that going, just me and him on a road trip at his age, and not having someone who could, make sure he's got his snacks and make sure everything's okay in a safe manner without being too distracted. So we'll see how it goes. We'll see how things are going into the weekend. So I got that going this weekend. The Dallas Fan Expo is, again, right now the plan. It's not official for me. I'm not going to be able to confirm really until probably next week. But right now my plan is to go to Dallas. And then the week after that, we're doing a road trip to St. Louis because my wife's family is mostly based in that area. And then potentially moving on from there to Oklahoma because she has extended family there who have not seen the kids either ever or they're older family members. And we're in a very, precarious time when, years are running out and wanting to see the kids for the first time or, for the last time potentially. So basically it's going to be pretty crazy. So yeah, that 2 weeks from now, especially doing the family reunion with my wife's family and then potentially going to Oklahoma and then having a huge 10-hour plus drive back with both kids. Yeah, we'll be splitting that into 2 days, to say the least. So it's going to be a crazy busy summer. All right, so so please indeed have patience with me. The only things that shouldn't be impacted actually are the streams, right? So the Tuesday, Wednesday streams. So my Tuesday evening stream, Eastern, and then obviously this stream Wednesday morning should not be impacted. At least I don't think they should be because of when we are planning to leave. The only one that might impact it is that second trip, that one that we're doing Oklahoma and St. Louis, all in one occasion, because I think the plan is for us to be in St. Louis. There's some issues going on with that, though, that could make it happen longer. Let's just say some are at the end of their life. So please, and I know I have got some awesome people in the chat always, but especially in the morning, I can see a couple people. Father Luca, hail to you, Father Luca. Scott McKenzie, I know, brothers in Christ. Please keep my wife's grandfather in your prayers, as things are not looking too good. Very long life though, but at the same time, it's still a loved one, and so obviously it's been tough on them with everything going on there. So obviously that could impact when she goes, when we go, what goes on with the reunion. Is there a reunion? So a lot of moving parts this summer, but I'll always try to keep y'all posted as much as I can. Sandy in the chat. What's going on, Sandy? I feel like it's been a while. Sandy, welcome. Scott McKenzie, there he is. Hail to you, good sir. Thanks for being here. I think aren't you in the Texas area? Because I feel like I've seen you at the Dallas meetups. I think I've seen you exclusively at the Dallas meetups, Texas meetups. Please correct me if I'm wrong on that. The Physics Channel with Kenny Lee. What's going on, Physics Channel? Kenny Lee saying, hello, Odin, and good morning. Good morning to you. I believe you're one of my UK people. Thenotos Felicitas, I think, is also one of my outside United States persons as well. What's up, Thenotos? What's going on? We got Father Luca. There he is. Father Luca, hail to you. Thanks for being here. We got Cat in Philly. Hey, guys, long time, Cat in Philly. It has been a while. Thank you for being here. Again, always awesome to see people that maybe sometimes can't make the Tuesday night streams in these morning ones. Martin, hey, good afternoon from the UK. What's going on? Welcome. Sandy, morning from the United States, of course. New York City, Sandy, welcome. Let's see. Father Lucas says, I should not be rude. Let me greet you properly. Laudate Jesus Christus in secula, Father Luca. Absolutely. Hail to you. Blessed time after Pentecost. It's kind of crazy that we're now in this ordinary time, as it were. Prince Green is a member saying, morning here in the States. Indeed it is. It's 10:14 a.m. Let's see. Martin Hay is saying, wailed Civil War yesterday. I'm assuming that just means that you watched Civil War yesterday. Got 50 minutes in and couldn't watch anymore. No likable characters, boring start. I would say to keep watching, dude, because I think this is going to be something where you'll probably be like, yeah, that's not my kind of movie. There are no likable characters. The only likable character to me is the older New York Times writer, right? The big, large guy. That's just because I like that actor. I think it's probably more so to do with that than it has to do with his character. None of the characters are supposed to really be likable. And that's kind of why I like it, because they're all journalists. And so them being unlikable is I think an accurate thing. Let's see. Killy Chow, what's going on? Welcome back. I am JMS. Yes, indeed. It is summertime. So the Good Morning Asgard edition of the Welcome to Asgard podcast is once again back. As I said, right now, just planning it to be 1 day a week. Might extend that out, right? If a lot of people are showing up to these, and if there's reasons to add on another one or two, I would absolutely be open to that, because I got a lot of free time. But obviously, I also want to make sure I'm able to get all the things I have to get done for the summer done. There's a lot of things around the house and in life and prep and things I want to read. I'm taking online courses just to expand my knowledge. There's a really great source is called the Institute of Catholic Culture. Even if you're not Catholic, it's just a very good resource. It's all free online classes by actual professors, people who are either in university or used to be in university. So people who are trained, people who are knowledgeable. It's not just random armchair theologians or armchair historians, right? It's people who actually do have training, who are qualified to teach, and it's completely free. And I've been loving it. Right now, I'm in the middle of courses on patristics, early church fathers, and on logic. And the first logic class was kind of a, wow, my goodness. Just shows you how bad things have gotten, especially in the United States, in our modern times, with the lack of logic, especially in discussion and in argumentation. Keely Chow, again, thank you for being here. Hyper and X13, what's going on? Joey Horn, what's going up, Joe Horn? What's up, brother? Welcome. I always see you on the Discord, of course. Glad to see you in the chat. Your average Patriot nerd, what's up, brother? Good morning, chat. Good morning to you. Thank you. Nearsighted Cyclops, what's going on? Carl Jacobs, good morning to you. Says, I should already be at work, but wife unit is going back to work for the first time after minor surgery. I'm helping. Hey, family comes first, and good on you, man. Good on you. Fear of FEMA, morning all, happy Wednesday. Indeed, happy and blessed Wednesday. Thank you very much, Scott McKenzie. Thank you, Prince Screen, for those prayers. Scott McKenzie, Houston, but my son lives in the Dallas area, planning to go to the meetup. Nice. Very cool. So if I'm able to go, I will be able to confirm that next week. And if I am able to go, the plan is for me to drive in on Friday, getting in sometime Friday evening so I can chill, relax a little bit. I'll be there all day Saturday. I don't know if I'm going to go to the Fan Expo because I don't know if anyone else in the group is going to the Fan Expo. You all know planning is always so good with my fellow YouTube brothers and sisters. Planning is always just top notch. What I do know is planned is, of course, that meetup on Saturday. So that's the main thing I'm going to. And then I'll be going to early mass on Sunday because of where the event is. It's only about a 20-minute drive to the Mater Dei parish, which has it's an FSSP, which is a Free Sleep Fraternity of Saints. Was it Free Sleep Fraternities of Saints Peter and Paul, or is it just Saint Paul? I forget the full name of it. It's been a while. It's been a while since I've been to an FSSP parish. Either way, they're a Latin Mass parish. So there's a 7 a.m. low Mass, and I'll be going to that 7 a.m. low Mass. Shout out to Matt317, because last year I think it was, man, my years are all mixed up. It was either last year or the year before. Matt317 was able to come into town, and we went to Mass together that day at that church, and then we got breakfast at the Waffle House that was right down the street. So if anyone's in the area, though, and you want to go to Mass, I'll be at that 7 a.m. Mass at Mater Dei. Let's see. The Rogue Attraction, what's going on, brother? Says, funny Moana 2 trailer, they blocked comments by putting it kid-friendly. Oh, boy. Yeah. And normally you don't put trailers in that because that puts a lot of restrictions on its reach, Rogue Attraction. Let's see. Thanatos Felicitas says, I'm from Atlanta, met you 2 years ago at G&G meetup in Orlando. I always forget, dude. 2 years ago especially, my brain is mush. My brain is mush. But Thanatos, thank you for clarifying that. Hypern, the Civil War soldiers can't be as unlikable as the parasites from Parasite 2019, right? JK, bad joke. Happy summer to you and the fam. Yeah, I still like Parasite too. And yeah, it doesn't have very likable people in it either. Fan Expo is expensive, says Scott McKenzie. I agree. Yeah, a lot of those events are always very expensive, and it is definitely something that I am, I used to be, when I would go to the meetups, be like, oh, of course I'm going to these fan events. And the last couple of times I've just been buying a day pass, basically. And that's, the last one we went to was in Orlando. The last one I went to, at least, was in Orlando. And so the Rippaverse was, of course, at MegaCon, and we all were on the floor walking around. So there was a reason to get the day pass for that one. But yeah, it's always crazy. Yeah, Physics Channel K. Lee says, you guys plan? I know, right? Oh, believe me, if I had the mental wherewithal capacity to be like, all right, let me be the planner, guys, I would take that on. I just know because of family and work obligations, I just wouldn't be able to do it. I wouldn't. But someone does. Someone, I think, needs to definitely get on that and plan. I know that's a part of the charm of a lot of us, right? It's like, oh yeah, because we totally have a plan. But at this point especially, it's like we probably should start to be a bit more organized in planning, or at least being a little bit more organized and more upfront with each other about, hey, by the way, this is what's going on, here's what's going on. So we were the first people to know. Thank you, Educated Pleb. Yeah, Priestly Fraternity of Saints Peter. Okay, that's what I thought. That is what I thought. So thank you for that clarification. All right, let's go ahead and dive into it. We, of course, will jump back into the chat because I do like for these streams to be focused on the chat since it's a little bit of a smaller community, right? A little bit of a smaller stream typically. We've got about 50 people. I say smaller, 50 people watching. Hot damn. That's more than the evening show. That's more than we typically have in the evening. Now, I know that Tuesday streaming, there's a lot of things going on. I know that Tuesday night's main event has been creeping up a little bit earlier, I think. Because it used to start really, really late, and now, it starts around 8 p.m. Eastern time, I think. It's been pretty consistent with 8 p.m. Eastern. But I know that sometimes those things can change, and so that makes it a little bit tough because maybe I get 30 minutes of people before they switch over to the Tuesday night main event. But yeah, maybe I'll have to be finding and looking ahead to changing the night stream to be on a different night. Tuesday nights typically work best for me, and I know it works for a lot of y'all because I've been doing that now for years. Again, this is episode 499 right now in the morning, but most of the streams that I've done have been in the evening, and that 7 o'clock, 7:30 slot I've been doing for a very long time because I used all the way back in the day when I was the one-man low council setting things up for the high council. Man, oh man, weren't those the days? All right, let me go ahead and see if I can get this figured out so that it does not drive me too crazy. It might drive me a little crazy. I've got two screens, but because of the way my mic is set up, it's like I'm like having to look over here, and it always feels weird, especially. But I guess when I'm in the corner, it doesn't matter as much. But the first bit of news is the one that's going to take the least amount of time that we'll talk about, because we talked about this a bit last night. But if anyone missed the stream last night or missed any of the box office coverage, we talked about this, that when it comes to the Memorial Day box office, the Garfield film indeed beat Furiosa. So even though Tony at Deadline and many of these other so-called box office experts are trying to say, Furiosa won the 4-day frame, right? It won the 4-day weekend. Yeah, not by all that much, though, right? Furiosa walked away with around $32 million, whereas $31 million went to the Garfield film. And on the actual holiday itself, right, on Memorial Day, the day in which people are off from work, the day in which most people, especially students, are now being off from school, or in the process of being off from school, right? This at least being a day off for them. Guess what? Families, people were going to see this film in much higher numbers. $7.2 million for that film. But even the movie IF, Imaginary Friend, from John Krasinski got $6.1 million, ended up edging out Furiosa's day number 4. So day number 11 of IF beat out day number 4 of Furiosa on that first Monday. The drop being around 21%, 8% increase for IF, 2% drop for the Garfield film. So this just gives you an idea of how poorly Furiosa is doing, right? I wouldn't say that this is showing us how well the Garfield film is doing, because keep in mind, when it comes to the Garfield film, it only cost $60 million to make, right? It only had a $60 million budget, which is insanely low in today's world, especially for a animated feature, having some big name actors in it from a major studio, right? That's very, very impressive numbers there, actually, right, from Sony to be able to put that out. But even at $60 million, it still needs to make quite a bit of money in order to break even. It got an early start internationally. It's already around $100 million, if memory serves, getting very close to that number. Yeah, $97.5 million according to the numbers.com as of this stream. So it's going to cross $100 million probably today when the updated numbers for Tuesday come out. Remember, Tuesday is that bargain ticket price, and so a lot more people tend to go to the theaters on Tuesday. It might also be another day that we see a strong number from families, since there's probably a lot of students that are out of school, a lot of people that are out of work. So this is well on its way to making its money back. Let's see if the numbers actually has this metric in here. It does. So right now it's made 1.6 times its budget. Typically, films need to make around 2.5 to 3 times its budget, depending on where it's making its money. At this point, this film's probably going to have to make more than 2.5 times its budget because it's made a lot more money internationally. It did get an early start there, so we could see those numbers even out. As time goes on, we could see Garfield legging out a little bit as time goes on as well. But the big news, of course, is that Furiosa is not legging at all, right? 21% sounds good, but when you remember that Monday is a holiday, you expect the film to have a low drop. You expect it to have a strong hold from Sunday to Monday. But it didn't get a 2% hold like the Garfield film did, right? It's the opening weekend of Garfield. That got a 2% hold. It's the second weekend of IF, and it got an 8% increase from the previous week. This dropping 21%, Kingdom of Planet of the Apes dropping only 14%. So this film actually had stronger drops, right? Stronger drops than other films that have been out for a much longer period of time. And I think that just shows us that not a lot of people have interest in this. And I can't say I'm that surprised. After the bait and switch that was Mad Max Fury Road, a film that I actually still appreciate because it's a very well-made movie. It's technically speaking a spectacular film to watch with some very brilliant effects, some very, more so than anything else, brilliant set pieces done by their stunt workers. This movie, on the other hand, Furiosa, can't even hold a candle to Fury Road. But at the end of the day, Mad Max Fury Road was a bait and switch. It did leave a lot of people who are fans of Mad Max in the cold. And so when this movie, Furiosa, was announced, people said, wait a minute, we already got the Furiosa film and it was called Mad Max Fury Road. Why would I want to see a prequel to a character that I didn't even want to see, really, in the first movie? In these two sets, right? In this set of two movies, right? So I can't say I'm surprised, because a lot of the hardcore Mad Max fans stayed home probably. Because they said, oh no, I've already seen a Furiosa film and I don't want to see that. I want to see a Mad Max movie, and this whole Mad Max saga, Furiosa, I'll just wait for that to come out. Add to that very bad trailers, which you could already tell the effects were not nearly the same. The action set pieces, nowhere close to it. And I mentioned this last night too, and I mentioned it before, that at the end of the movie of Furiosa, they show you scenes from Fury Road, and the action pieces in the credits for Furiosa are better than anything that are in the actual film. That's awful for a action movie, for your trailer to have scenes from the last movie, and those scenes are actually better coordinated, better choreographed sequences, more intense sequences than the film that you've just put on screen. That is a very, very bad sign. That's a very bad indication of the quality of your movie. And sure enough, the film's not making anything. I talked about this last night. Using the actual raw current data, the film is over $200 million in the red, which means because of how slowly the film is performing, the chances of it ending well north of $100 million in the red is very likely. What say you? Let's go back into the chat before doing our retrospect on 2024 films. Remember, if you have a comment or question, since some people haven't been around in a while, just because, again, of times and time zones and stuff, which I totally get, which is why I love doing these morning streams. So, again, thank y'all for being here. Please smash the like button, share the stream out as well for those that maybe don't know that we are currently live, as I'm sure some of y'all are prepared to get ready for Geeks and Gamers Daily. That's why we will be ending around 11 a.m. Eastern time, maybe going a little bit over, but not by much. Andrew Hayes, what's going on, brother? Says, hello, been listening on my way to work. Well, Andrew Hayes, hope you have a wonderful day at work, and thank you very much for listening in. 499 crew, okay, got it now. I am terrible at context. I really am. Print screen, thank you for putting it in even clearer terms. 499, on our way to 500, let's go. Gotcha. Episode 499. It is indeed episode 499. Team 499, let's go. Next week, 500. Hose Ataka, what's going on, brothers? It's a little slow today. I'll highlight and read your comment, but please, again, at Odin at the very beginning of your comment, just lets me know that you're not talking to someone else in the chat. Helps me, visually be able to, decipher between the chats. But Hose Ataka says, should theaters lower their prices? I would like to take my family more than once every couple of months. Inflation is what's hurting people. And that's the problem, though, right? Is that if the theater lowers its ticket prices, and I think you also have to say, should they lower their popcorn prices? Should they lower their drink prices, right? In an ideal world, I would say absolutely, right? Because they are price gouging to the nth degree. But then you have to remember how much money it costs to run a theater, especially in today's world, right? Because of the terrible economy that we have. And I think especially of places in New York, there's an AMC 25 in New York. So not only is it a building in New York City, it has 25 screens going throughout the entirety of the day. Imagine the electricity bill. Imagine just the energy bill alone, not to mention what you're paying in city taxes, state taxes, all the extra excessive nonsensical taxes that you have to pay because you happen to live in New York City. And then add to that how much you're splitting with the studios. Because remember, right, in the long run, we say domestically, the studio split with the theaters is about 55%. So studios would get about 55% of the overall box office take. But in the opening weekends, especially of movies, that tends to be a lot higher, more towards the studios. When I was working at AMC, and this was some years ago, this was back, 2015-ish, when I talked to my general manager about it, he said, we keep about $1 for every $10 spent on movie tickets, meaning about 90% of the box office on the opening weekend, and usually the first 2 weeks, a lot more of that tends to go to the actual studios. Now, obviously, a lot has changed since COVID because of how movies are now going to streaming and PVOD platforms so much more quickly. The theatrical windows have shrunk quite a bit. So I imagine, I know that Valiant Renegade has talked a lot about this as well, that it makes sense for those contracts, those deals to have changed a little bit, right? So that they're not getting nearly as much of the cut opening weekend or the first couple weekends, but they're still getting a large portion, right? Because they're going to get most of that money back. It's in the long run, right? After the first 2 weeks, that's typically in the past, and I imagine it's still the same now, since less people are going to a movie, then the theaters get to keep a much larger chunk of that. But in order to make up for those, not necessarily losses, but the incomes that really are not, telling you the entire story, right? If you say, oh man, you had a $100 million weekend, yeah, but if you only get 40 million of that, or opening weekend, you're probably looking closer to 20 to 30 million of that. Sounds like a lot on paper, but as a company, when you've got multiple theaters set across the nation, all with their own taxes to pay, all with the electricity and energy bills and the upkeep and the employees, it goes away really, really quickly. And so going back to the main thing about them lowering their prices, I think that they should if they want more people coming back. But I guess the point is, can they? Either one, can they afford to do that because of how little they actually get in those ticket sales, the fact that they don't get 100% of the ticket sales, no matter what the metric is, they don't get 100% of it, right? In a best case scenario, it's about a 50-50 split. And also, not just the fact that they are getting so little or because they're having to split the total revenue from box office receipts. So can they afford to do that? But then also, would it be enough to entice people to come back? Because whereas someone like you, right, and I know if I didn't have something like AMC A-List, which just makes sense, right, to have something like that when you go to see as many movies as I try to in a given year. Saves you a lot of money in the long run, right? But if you're not someone like that, there's so many people that don't want to go, not because of the price necessarily, just because of the convenience of saying, oh, well, it's going to be out in streaming in a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, maybe a month at most. I know there's some that are still pushing it to a over 45-day theatrical window. But some people are saying, you know what? If it's not something I have to see right now, I can wait. That's something that COVID, I think, really affected was the habit of moviegoing, right? It affected the habit of moviegoing to such a degree that now the theaters are the ones who are losing out because the studios are putting out the same garbage. They're putting out the same drivel, right? Uninspired, overpriced drivel and still trying to split their revenues with the theaters. But then the theaters also have to say, all right, because we're getting a lot less, guess what? Supply and demand, we have to kind of increase our prices a little bit because if we don't, we're not going to be able to continue to run. I know that Father Miller, shout out to Father Christopher Miller, he sent an image of one of his local theaters and it's shutting down. It actually just shut down this past weekend because they couldn't afford it anymore. Now, I don't know what kind of prices that they were charging, but I imagine it was probably higher than what they've previously charged for things. Let's see. Sebastian, what's going on? Says, a new Mad Max Enuma. A new Mad Max Enuma. Oh my goodness. There it is. A new Mad Max film with Mel Gibson would be awesome. There it is. We got there. We got there, Sebastian. We did it. Yeah, I know a lot of people feel that way, right? If you had an old man Mel Gibson, old Mad Max with Mel Gibson in it, it would do well. I don't think it would do as well as some people think. Because if it was going to be done well, it'd probably be a rated R film. It'd probably be a throwback to especially Road Warrior. And it would bring a lot more people than Furiosa out. I can absolutely say that. I have complete confidence that it would sell more tickets than Furiosa. But would it be a massive hit? It's hard to say. Because there's no such thing as a guaranteed hit anymore, right? You go back last year alone to Mission Impossible, right? Mission Impossible 7 had one of the worst names, Dead Reckoning Part 1, which I think in the hindsights they've in their marketing, I think they've changed it a little bit maybe. But that movie cost a crazy amount of money, and it ended up not making a whole lot, right? It was expected to be, could it be $1 billion film? Could it be an $800-900 million film? And it only ended up in the 600-700 range, right? Something like that, if not less. And a lot of people ask the question of, well, why, right? It was a fun movie. I really enjoyed it. It was one of my favorite films of last year. It was a very fun movie. Some people say, oh, it's a part 1 to a 2-part story. Some people don't like that. That could be true. For me, I think for that movie specifically, it's because of when they released it. I think that they did a terrible job in trying to do this weird early release schedule where they were like, you have early showings as early as like Sunday, Monday. And then you're like, wait a minute, when's it opening? It kind of hurt, I think, the buildup that typically films can have going on for it. I think that was probably the bigger reason as to why it didn't do so well. You add to that, right, a much more competitive market, but because if it had gone up, for instance, against a week earlier and had gone head-to-head against Dial of Destiny, I think it probably would have legged out a bit better, right? Even though it would have had some competition down the line. Because I think that's when it got, eventually, everything got gobbled up by the Barbenheimer phenomenon. But the film was good enough on its own merit to be able to bring people out to the theater, but it didn't. So there's no such thing as a guaranteed hit anymore, right? Even if everything on paper seems to indicate it should be successful, that it should be doing well, doesn't mean that it's going to happen. Let's see. Print Screen says, Sony always keeps their budgets on the lower side. The most expensive movie recently was Uncharted, which was $120 million. Yeah, and it definitely shows. Your Average Patriot Nerd, who is a member, says, I don't have a family, but I imagine taking a family of 4 to the movies sounds very expensive at today's prices. Yeah, even if you get your ticket price, right? If the average ticket price is around $13, $14, and again, this is nationally, obviously it might be higher or lower in your area, but on average nationally, $13 to $14 is probably the average ticket price. If you then were to say, okay, let's say I've got 5 kids that all fit the kids' rate, that only drops at about $3 or $4, which again, if you have 4 kids, that is, quite some savings, but you're still paying about $10 for their ticket. So that's still a lot of money. Then you add on top of that the inevitability that they're going to want some kind of food, like popcorn or soft drinks or kids packs or whatever it might be, candy. And those things cost an arm and a leg. So you're going to spend well over $100. And that's just maybe on tickets alone, because you're not even taking into account sales tax with those tickets. And add to that the concession stand, you're looking at probably a $100 to $200 outing just to go see a movie. Sebastian says, I read that the budget for Mission Impossible 8 is increasing to nearly $400 million because of several delays and also malfunctioning equipment, set, a submarine actually. Yeah, and it'll be interesting to see what the final budget is, because remember, one of the things that helped Mission Impossible 7 was the fact that they had, though their budget got ballooned by delays, they had gotten insurance. And so insurance actually was able to cover and mitigate some of those costs. I think they got almost about $100 million back for that movie, if I'm not mistaken. Let me see if I can look that up really quick to confirm that, because I remember initially their losses looked really, really bad, and then they had that, so their total cost was around $291 million. So almost a $300 million budget was what the first film, right, Dead Reckoning Part 1, ballooned to. But because of the fact they got some money back because of the insurance they had, and it covered some of the delays, it went down to 219. So roughly 70 million. So not 100, $70 million they got back though. Okay. So it went from being well over a $100 million loss to being maybe a $70, $80 million loss. Now, in the case of that film, I will say, I think it probably has been able to make up a decent portion of those losses with PVOD and 4K sales. But you never want to be in a position where you're having to make up ground, right? It's not a good position to be in. So even though there on paper is a reason to have them make up that money and end up being profitable in the long run, you never want to be acting in that place. Yeah, it only got $567 million. I was being too generous. Yeah, only $567 million worldwide is what that film got. And that movie was expected to do gangbusters. And it didn't. So let's hope that their next release date is better planned. Think Noodle. Oh man, I feel like it's been a while since I've seen Think Noodle. What's going on, Think Noodle? Welcome back. Martin Hayes says, it costs about $7.99, this is in the UK, to see a movie near me, and you then spend $20 to $30 on drink and snacks. Yep. But remember, right, if it ever is, because I don't know what the average price in the UK might be for a ticket, the one thing to always consider is because of the fact theaters do not make really much of anything on ticket sales, that's where they have to make their money, right? So because the studios are taking so much of that money from those ticket sales, they have to make it up somehow. And since not everyone buys concessions, ultimately the concessions have to be a specific price to, to make it worthwhile for them, to be able to keep their doors open, unfortunately, because things have become so expensive. See, Hybrid says, a random question. What's the longest running show series you've ever watched? My mom and I finished Supernatural all 15 seasons. Wasn't all great, but fun experience nonetheless. I was going to say probably Supernatural because I also watched all of it all the way to the end. Yeah, there's definitely some seasons that are not as good as others, but there was never a terrible season, right? Because even the worst seasons still had good episodes or fun episodes at least. So I think that you're right there. So Supernatural, I forget how many seasons Smallville ran for, because I feel like that one actually ran for quite a long time as well. I don't think it was anywhere near as close. 10 seasons, I believe. Yeah, so 10 seasons. So that would probably be one of the next longest running series that I've seen all the episodes for. My wife and I are actually watching Smallville. She'd never seen it before. Christoph of the Polish Geek. What's up, Christoph? Yeah, dude, welcome back. Best Mad Max movie is Road Warrior. Oh, absolutely. I'm going to be honest. I actually don't like the first Mad Max movie. I don't think it's a very well-made film. The editing and the pacing of the film, to me, are very jarring and just don't really come across as being polished. Road Warrior then turns it around. You're like, oh, yeah, this is the movie. Now, this is a film I can rewatch. This is a film I really enjoy. So, yeah, Road Warrior is fantastic. And then I actually like Thunderdome. I think it's a fun film. Martin Hay says, my friend and I were talking about the lack of films we were excited about and the lack of movie star draw nowadays. Yeah, movie stars are dead, right? Movie stars have no real impact on box office. Some people said, well, Tom Cruise, but yeah, look at Dead Reckoning, though. Dead Reckoning didn't make its money back. Dead Reckoning was a flop. And even though we could argue it was Tom Cruise in an action film that got it as high as 500 plus million, sure, I could grant you that. It's not enough in today's world and in today's market. And he's been in other films that have done a lot less than that. So yeah, the individual actor does not sell the movie. It's usually a combination of the individual actor in a specific kind of movie. So usually Tom Cruise in an action film is going to have a certain audience built in, right? There is still some truth to that. But it's the same level of truth of, yeah, Marvel MCU still has a built-in audience. It's a lot smaller. It's a heck of a lot smaller if you look to a film like The Marvels, which barely cracked $200 million worldwide. So we have seen absolutely the death of the movie star, for sure. Hyper says, have most releases been projected better than most new movies? I heard Spider-Man and Phantom Menace made good numbers, but wanted to hear your thoughts. I mean, if we're talking about per theater, sure. Like the per theater ratio on some of those releases has been pretty good. But as far as like crazy insane numbers, like just raw data, raw numbers, I would say no, right? It's performed about as well as a old movie that most people have already seen and could see at their home and wouldn't necessarily want to go out to see instead, right? And so if we're talking per theater, and I think that that's a decent metric to use from time to time, right? Let me see if I can even go back in time a little bit to give us a comparison. So we're in May right now. Let's see, would it have been the 13th? So Spider-Man. Yeah, so for instance, the fourth day of release, the Monday, May 13th, For Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, it was making about $1,000 per theater. Amazing Spider-Man 2 was making about $1,000 per theater as well. 4,000 screens versus 466. So what that means is that you're making the same number, the same amount of money per screen that you're in, but because of the smaller number of screens, more people are going to be in your Amazing Spider, even for Amazing Spider-Man 2, which I think is one of the worst Spider-Man films to be made. Even that film, though, was doing those kinds of numbers. So it just meant that in those 4-inch screens, you would have a few people probably scattered throughout, right? Maybe even would have a completely full theater in certain markets, maybe, depending on the size of the theater, depending on the market, the interest. So in that degree, sure. But then you look at the numbers, you say, okay, on a Monday, it made $500,000. Okay, that's still cool because the film came out years ago. It's not new. It's not even a good film necessarily. And so making $500,000 in a day seems pretty good. But 4.4 million is what Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes made on that Monday, right? So even though it had, the same roughly per theater ratio, it still made $4.4 million, right? So I think that is kind of the trade-off, or that's kind of the, it's a double-edged sword where, yes, technically they're doing well if you look at just the raw numbers at each individual theater, but in raw numbers, not as much. Let's see. Cat and Philly, I agree. There's a lot of really cool older films that are getting put out there. Let's see. Christoph of the Polish Geek says, do you accept movies being sent to you by mail? Because I have some I would love for you to check out. Absolutely, dude. Absolutely. I have a P.O. box. You can find it in the video description below. If I'm doing it off the top of my head, it's 4432, P.O. Box 4432, Chattanooga. But you can find the official address down in there. Just, I will say, if anyone ever does send me anything in the post in the P.O. box, please just let me know when you sent it, because I don't check it all the time. And there's been at least one time when a package was sent, I didn't know. And by the time I got there, it had been sent back because they don't hold packages for very long. So just let me know. Let me know if you ever decide to do that. All right, Kayan Kareen. What's up, Kayan Kareen? I haven't seen that name in a long time. Kayan Kareen, what's going on? Thank you for the $5 super chat. Appreciate that. First super chat in a while. Says, Lord of the Rings trilogy will be released in theaters as well. I know. And here's the kicker, though. Here's what kills me. The last time I checked, the show times for the release suck. There's only one showing per day, and it's at 4 p.m. Eastern. And that sucks for me because even though I'm off for summer, I can't go see a movie at 4 p.m. Eastern when my kids get picked up at 5. It's just not going to work. Like, I was like, man, I wish they had a 10 a.m. showing, maybe even a 9 a.m. showing, because then I could see every single one of those movies, right? I could see one this day at 9, this day at 9, this day at 9, but I can't do that when they're starting at 4 p.m. At best, I'd be able to see 45 minutes. And that's like, it's not worth going to see. I mean, don't get me wrong. It'd still be great to see that on a big screen, but I can watch it on my screen at home, which has very good sound and such, But Kay and Kareen, thank you very much for that super chat. Really do appreciate that. And yeah, absolutely. I think that will be the one film series coming back I'll be most interested to see what the box office looks for. What it looks like. Because not only is that just a series that's well over 20 years old now, right, from when those films came out, the versions being put out in theaters is the extended edition versions, and it's getting a 4 p.m. release. So I feel like that's going to limit some of the people that are going to be able to see the film. Because anyone with kids and family probably not going to make that work out, I imagine. Unless you have maybe older kids and they're fans of the movies or whatever it might be, whatever your situation might be. But I'm going to be very interested to see what those numbers look like. Sebastian, excited for Deadpool Wolverine? I actually am. I think there's a lot of potential it has. Shorty Short, Laura, the Modern Major General story. What's going on, Laura? Says, good morning to you. Very early for you, Laura. Print screen, my early access show for Mission Impossible in Dolby was almost sold out. When I left the theater, I thought the movie could have made $1 billion. I guess I was wrong. Yeah, that's why you never, ever never assume success based off of two things. Never assume box office success based off of pre-sales, because pre-sales can be misleading, and pre-sales only tell you part of the story. It doesn't account for walk-ups, for instance. And two, when it comes to fan screenings, keep in mind, those are the people that are the most passionate about seeing it. And I think back to this. It used to be that when they had midnight showings, you would have that prime midnight showing in IMAX, and it would be sold out. You would also, though, have 3 or 4 other screens, and they would be pretty well attended also. You don't have that anymore, right? Nowadays, when you have the 7 p.m. show or the 8 p.m. show, most people are going to that 7 p.m. show, that primetime show, and even then, it's not ever sold out anymore in most places. So the dynamic has changed a lot. See, Joey Horn says, very true. There are no guarantee hits. Hollyweird has messed up so many franchises. Agreed. Big Worm. What's up, Big Worm? He's a member of the channel. Like it's been a while. Says, took the family to see Garfield. My wife and I have always loved Garfield. It cost us about $90 for the family to go to a movie now. $13 per ticket plus popcorn drinks. Used to be $50 for a matinee. Dang. Well, I will say 90 sounds a little low. So maybe it could have been worse. Big Worm could have been a little worse. Tomby, what's going on, Tomby? Is it Tomby or Toomby? Tomby or Toomby? Your average printed nerd says, I think Old Man Mad Max written as it should be, not for the modern audiences, but with Fury Road set pieces would have gone great. Now after what we've got, I don't know. Yeah. And imagine if they were to do that and then at the same time were to do all, if not most of them being practical effects. Could save a lot of money on that. Big Worm, now for $90, the movie better be well worth seeing in theaters. We've even started waiting for streaming, even though I want to support the theaters. That's the other thing too, right? We want to support theaters. So many of us are hungry. We are hungry for good content. We want to see films on the big screen. There's still a magic, despite that really cringe commercial. If you go to an AMC, you know what I'm talking about, with Nicole Kidman. We make movies better, right? I'm like, no, ma'am, just get off my screen, please. I don't want to see you right now, Nicole. Thank you. Like, there is a truth to it, though, right? There is a magic to the big screen. It is something that our at-home viewing can just never make up for, can never truly account for, right? And it's important, I think, to keep those things in context. Let's see. Bitter Gen X Mutant says, Sweden, the price is like $16. Dang. Prince Screen, the only name that draws people to the theaters anymore is Christopher Nolan. Prince Screen, I would also disagree with you. No, again, Nolan's name. There are a lot of names that can bring a guaranteed set audience. So Nolan has an audience. Absolutely, he can bring in. But it's not a guaranteed hit. It's not a guaranteed success, okay? And I know that the excuse is going to be COVID, but if you look at Tenet, I think that is a great example, right? That film made $365 million worldwide, right? So that film was a theatrical flop. Now, one could argue, well, hey, it did pretty well for the time. A couple months later, though, Spider-Man No Way Home made well over $1 billion, right? So I agree that he has an audience, but there's a lot of actors and directors that have audiences. But again, we're talking about guaranteed set audiences versus bring in, because you can't survive. No movie can make a lot of money just relying on your go-to solid, always going to show up audience. You have to bring in normies. You have to bring in the not common moviegoer, right? I think I've used this source before, but it's movio.co, and it always provides, I think, very interesting insights. And it takes this actually into account, right? So you'll notice that for the weekend of the 24th, right, Furiosa in its opening weekend made up about, so this past weekend, had 32.8% of the audience, according to their numbers here, okay? Garfield had about 19.9% of the audience. Now, again, they're using their own metrics, so take it with a grain of salt. So for Furiosa, though, 74% of the audience, this is why I like it, because of the demographic, 74% of the audience of opening weekend people, right, of the opening weekend that saw Mad Max, or sorry, correction, that saw Furiosa this past weekend, 74% were men. And so for them to have the female lead and to be pushing that narrative does not actually make sense, because they're not getting a predominantly female audience. You have to make these movies, for the case of Mad Max, doesn't matter if you put Furiosa in the title, as this indication, as this data shows, and we can go to any movie and show the same thing, this does not drive women out to go see it. You know what women are going to see? They're going to see films like Barbie. But even Barbie was only about 60-40 in favor of women. So the vast majority still of moviegoers are men. So if you're not going to market movies in general, but especially action films, which tend to be much more predominantly male audiences, if you're not going to make films for them, if you're not going to market films for them, guess what? You are killing your industry. And I think that's what you saw with Furiosa, right? They were clearly trying to appeal to a more broad audience, a more broad demographic. And guess what? Didn't change the difference. Didn't change the actual split between them. For Garfield, as you can see, it was actually 53% female. So it's very rare that on an opening weekend, there is a predominantly female audience for almost any movie. But this makes a lot of sense because you can imagine a lot of families going to see this, a lot of moms with their kids going to see this would make a lot of sense. But the thing I wanted to bring up was this, right? So Mad Max, right? Look at this opening weekend. This is the reason. If you want to know what makes or breaks a movie, it is, can you drive frequent moviegoers or infrequent moviegoers to your screen? Can you bring the normies? This is where that term normie comes in. Normie means who are the people that are not just the frequent moviegoers, the passionate ones, but who are the ones that maybe don't go see everything. They have a few movies a year that they might go out and see because they feel like it's worth going to see. Look at the difference here. Infrequent movie-going audience for Furiosa was 56%. And they define infrequent as someone who has been to less than 6 movies in the past 6 months. So seeing less than a movie a month, essentially, right? So 56% of the audience for Furiosa were people who saw films infrequently. So half the audience, roughly, were people who are not your typical moviegoer. Compare that, though, to Garfield. 74% of the audience for Garfield are people who are infrequent. So you want to know why you saw much more impressive numbers for Garfield in comparison to Furiosa? This is why. If you want to know why long-term Furiosa is going to flop and Garfield's going to be a success, because Garfield is driving out not just a stronger female demographic, because again, demographics don't always tell you the entire story, but the bigger number to me is it's driving out many more people who are not your typical moviegoer for your opening weekend, right? So to show you if similar story, predominantly female audience there, 81% of the audience, even for this past weekend, was an infrequent moviegoer. So clearly this franchise might actually have some life in it, or rather this new movie, I should say, might actually have some life back in it. So it's always fun going into those demographic breakdowns. I don't think I'm going to be able to actually get to my movie reviews this morning because we're getting close to end time. I don't want to go, I'll go past a little bit 11, but obviously I don't want to step on the toes of the Geeks Gamers daily stream because I don't like doing that. I don't like stepping on other people's streaming times. Lex Ladendi, what is going on? Welcome. Sebastian, The Rock is making a A24 film, very surprising to me. Yeah, but A24 does have a bit of range. Most of their films are definitely smaller, weird indie films, but I feel like they have sometimes films that are branched out a little bit. Christoph Polski says, not a huge fan of the first Mad Max movie either, actually. Also a good modern show recommended, Twisted Metal. I actually did enjoy Twisted Metal. There's some things I didn't like in it for obvious reasons, but overall it was entertaining. I can't believe that Samoa Joe was the guy under the clown mask. HyperNex13, I would like to see Smallville some point. Need to wash my eyes from the first look. New Superman image. Currently watching the anime One Piece. Can't believe it's been running since 1998. Yeah, it's kind of crazy. Big Worm, I got the whole family Saturday, Sunday at 3 p.m. and 7 p.m. Central on Monday for the Lord of the Rings showings. I'm so excited, but yeah, it's weird times. I did not know. I'm happy to hear that they might have actually added a showtime. Because again, the last time I checked, there was only one showing time. And again, every theater might be a little bit different. So my hope is that the sales for that 4 p.m. showing were strong enough for them to extend that out to another movie. Because if it's at 7 p.m., I might be able to make that work. 7 p.m., yeah, there's a chance I might fall asleep, but it's also still Lord of the Rings, and so there's a stronger chance that I won't fall asleep. Anyway, Laura says, speaking of TV series, I'm rewatching Frasier right now. All 7 seasons are pretty solid. Nice. Christoph the Polish Geek says, fun fact, Daily Wire movies, Terror on the Prairie is objectively a better made film, but Shut In feels far more personal to me. I think that's a good point. I've seen both of them. Remember that in the case of at least Shut In, it was a film not made by the Daily Wire. It was licensed by them, meaning it was distributed by them. So it had already been made. They put it on their platform because no one else was taking it in to put it in theaters or anything. And Terror on the Prairie, I think that's one that actually was produced by Daily Wire. So it was actually, they had a process they had a part of the creative process, I think. Brian Barth, what's going on? Been a while, dude. Hypern says, morning time would be perfect for Lord of the Rings. You're telling me they had an Alien 1979 showing for 11 a.m., but not Lord of the Rings? Yeah, seriously. Brian Barr, 2024 films so far have not been successful at the box office, and inflation keeps rising. Print screen, the theater I went to, Mission Impossible, might have something to do with it. I just saw Ungentlemanly Warfare at this theater after a month, and it was still crowded. Well, there you go. Yeah, you might be in a certain market, and again, because every market's a little bit different. That's the other thing. You have to be very careful of region bias, because every region is different. Every region's a little bit different. All right, Jose Taco, maybe lowering the cost of making a movie. I believe cost is not reflecting quality. Yeah, no, absolutely. Most of the movies that are spending $200+ million, I mean, look at Aquaman. The amount of money put into that movie, and it was garbage. Nominate, what's going on? Welcome. John Evan Bear, what's up, brother? Time to say, went to see 2 Bruceploitation films, and it was awesome, especially The Dragon Lives Again. Hyper. And speaking of star draw and Supernatural, Jensen Ackles is in need for a movie role. I think if they made him new Cyclops for X-Men and gave him Captain America level treatment, that will get my buck. I just don't trust anything that Disney is doing with X-Men or anything. I don't think that they have the capacity to do it. Remember, I think you're going to have a lot of people talking about the X-Men with the Wolverine, Deadpool Wolverine film, and they're going to be like, oh man, Marvel's back. They're back, everybody. The problem with that, though, is it's going to be an anomaly. All right? The success that I think is going to come the way of X-Men Wolverine, of Deadpool Wolverine, is going to be an anomaly, because that movie, though it is a Fox film, right? Though it is under the Disney umbrella, it's gotten approval, right? They've done the marketing with Kevin Feige, being like, hey, look, he's involved. That is a Ryan Reynolds movie. That's a Ryan Reynolds movie. You could already see it in the marketing. You can already see it in the way the marketing's being presented. It's a whole different animal. So people going to see it are not thinking, man, I'm so excited for the MCU now. People are going into it saying, man, I can't wait to see what kind of jokes he has got into this movie. In fact, you know what? Someone like me, I'm like, I can't wait to see how he tears the MCU and Kevin Feige a new one. I imagine I'm not the only one that feels that way of being excited for that reason. Let's see. GMonkey76, what's going on? Print screen. I respectfully have to disagree about Tenet. No Way Home was over a year later. If Tenet came out in 2022 or beyond, it would have made at least... Okay, yes. So I think I misspoke that film came out in 2021 versus 2020. But I will still say, yeah, even so, if people were that obsessed with Nolan, they would have gone out to see that film in theaters, right? So Nolan, again, I'm not trying to say that he doesn't have an audience. He does have an audience. I'm just saying, to say that Nolan's the only one or one of the only ones that has it, he might be one of the few, but even his audience is still limited, okay? Let's see. Fear of Fame, what's going on? Gary Banjo Sandwich says, next is 500. Indeed. Next episode is 500. Your average Patriot Nerd, have a good one. Yeah, we're going to start to wrap things up. Laura says, I got the last seat for Fellowship at my theater. Boom. Nice. Will Riker, good show on It's Time for G&G Daily. Everyone have a good rest of the day. Indeed, enjoy the Geeks Gamer Daily stream. I hope you get invited one day. That'd be nice. Heartbreak Ridge. I just listened to a Micro. What's up, Heartbreak Ridge? To a Micro podcast for back in March with Angel Studios guys about how Disney sued them and how they led to their studio. Worth a listen. Yeah, I've heard a little bit about that story already. Let's see. Bitter Gen X Mutant. Not seeing a tag there. Awesome. So you're going to wrap things up here today. So let me just, because it is in the title and I want to make sure I can go through these, and obviously we will do, I'll do a fuller breakdown of this at some point. Maybe on next week's show, we'll come back to the topic of 2024 films in review. But I think the big story of the box office today was big. And then, of course, y'all's comments. Did not expect to have. We had up to 50 people at one point, so that was awesome. But I know some of y'all are planning to or thinking about going to watch the Geeks and Gamers daily stream. So please make sure to support them, of course. But let's just go quickly through the films that I have seen in 2024. And most of them, there's only one or two. I'm not sure if they were actually released in 2024 officially. One is listed as 2023, but it's hard to say. Madam Web. Oh man, this movie is terrible. 10% heinous score. Awful. They Called Him Mostly Harmless. Very interesting documentary from 2024 in HBO Max. Just Max. Sorry to name you Max. Overall, it was rad. It wasn't a perfect film. I think that the characters in the documentary, because a lot of it is people who are do-it-yourself. Basically, there's an online community of internet sleuths that are trying to discover who this guy is, and there's like a dark story that's being unveiled throughout. It's pretty interesting. But other than the interesting characters, it does leave something to be desired. But overall, it's a pretty rad film. Beekeeper was so much better than I thought it was going to be. Still not a great film, but not a film I ever plan to watch again. But overall, it was pretty rad. Dune Part 2. I gave it a decent score because it is beautiful to look at. I do love Denis Villeneuve, but the movie itself is not very good. Especially on rewatch, it did not hold up. And the changes, especially they made to the characters, and especially the character of Chani, oh boy, garbage. Cabrini, probably one of the best films to come out this year. An excellent, excellent movie. And it's one that I think whether you're Catholic or not, you can find enjoyment in. This one being distributed by Angel Studios. Phenomenal about this true story, right, of this actual American saint and the work that she did, especially to help the poor. One Life. This is a film that I think technically was 2023, but a lot of its release was in 2024. For me, at least, Anthony Hopkins destroys this performance. He does an amazing, by destroy in a good way, right? He's wicked in this performance. He's phenomenal in this performance, and I recommend watching it. It's very interesting. I'd never heard of this before. Basically about a stockbroker who went to visit Czechoslovakia in the 1930s and rescued Jewish children before the onset of World War II, known as Kinder Transport. Never heard of it before. A phenomenal story, a phenomenal human being. So definitely would recommend that film. A movie that's on YouTube. It's a documentary series, actually. Mass of the Ages. All three parts are phenomenal. This was the last part of the three-part trilogy, Guardians of Tradition. This deals specifically with the attempted suppression of the Latin Mass. So this is much more of a Catholic movie, but obviously I thought it was very well done, exposed a lot of very important things, and something I hope the bishops across the world start to take a bit more seriously, to be able to, I think, again, to be able to make sure the Latin Mass is protected, because truly it is a Mass that goes all the way back to the early centuries of the church, and the most base components go back to well before the first millennia, right? I mean, we're talking before 1000 AD, the Mass essentially was in its form before officially being codified in the 1500s. Ghostbusters Frozen Empire, not a good movie. I barely gave it a decent score because there were some things that were good. There was some potential in here, but unfortunately, it just falls flat on its face, and it's just not a good movie. It's just not a good film in any way. But overall, gave it a very low, decent score. Civil War, so much better than anyone says that it is. This film was actually pretty rad. I thought that the way in which it presented and showed, especially the downside, or rather the evil side of media personalities, basically showing you that when it comes to reporters, when it comes to people in the media, that they care more about the story than they do about human life. I think it shows them clearly as the bad guys. Phenomenal movie. I gave it a rad score. Not a perfect film by any means. You can easily pick it apart in different ways. If you remember that it's a fantasy movie, and it kind of gets that started when you have America being split with California and Texas on the same side. All right, that's already a fantasy, okay? So some of the other fantastical elements that are unrealistic make sense to me. Steve Martin, a documentary in 2 pieces. I love Steve Martin. Don't let my score fool you, right? The documentary is not very good. It's just not very well constructed. Part 2 is better than part 1. Steve Martin is phenomenal. Apparently, my wife has read his book, his biography. If you've read that, there's almost no new information in this. So take that for what it is. Overall, though, if you like Steve Martin, part 2 might be worth your time because you get to see Steve Martin and Martin Short going back and forth a couple times. Ministry of Gentleman Warfare, a film that is just very unforgettable, right? It was fine, right? It was a low rad score for me, but it's ultimately forgettable. This film might actually eventually go into the decent category because I don't really ever want to watch it again. Rebel Moon Part 2 Scargiver. Terrible garbage film. Zack Snyder, stop making movies. Stop making movies, please. 10% garbage, heinous film. Fall Guy was okay. Fall Guy was actually a pretty rad film. It also lacks a bit of that rewatchability. I might rewatch it with my wife because I think she might be interested in the film itself. I gave it a higher score, though, because I do appreciate that it is a love letter to stunt people. All right? I love that it's a love letter to stunt men and stunt women, and I think that the chemistry, especially between the two on-screen leads, is very good. So again, a high or a decent rad score for this movie. And then lastly, Furiosa, a Mad Max saga, not really anything to do with Mad Max. 45% decent score for me. It didn't fall into the bogus category because it did still have some pretty cool shots. It did also have a very good performance in the movie by Anya Taylor-Joy, but ultimately the film is overlong, bloated. The story is bloated as well, and it's really not worth seeing in theaters. I'm going to be perfectly honest about that. I think it's being well overrated here. Apparently, my friends at the Salty Nerd podcast enjoyed it. I don't know quite how they are able to enjoy it, but again, everyone has a little bit of a different taste. And that is going to be a wrap-up for the films of 2024. Last comments, and then we're getting out of here. Because I hate going over other people's time, and I don't want to go over too much of the Geeks and Gamers. Not that there's too much crossover there, but there might be. Hyper and MCU is a mess, and Kevin Feige went cuckoo and seeing Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. I got nothing but a Force Awakens reaction from it. Definitely felt Disney compared Fox trilogy. Yeah, and it's also just a movie that not anyone was really asking for. Lex Lodendi, I wish Cabrini had more appropriately reflecting her passion for Jesus. Seemed like it was lacking. Yes, Lex Lodendi, that's been the big criticism, is that there was not much of focus on her spiritual life. But keep in mind that that's something that was to be expected, right? I think focusing more so on her actual regular everyday work is showing how prayer is not just about your rosary. It's not just about your individual prayer life. It's about living out the faith. And so focusing on her living out the faith, I think, was well worth it. Gary Banjo Sandwich, 50% is a good score. No, it's not. Barry Sandwich. No, it's not. Prince Screen, I enjoyed Gentleman Warfare more the second time. I watched it, not objectively great, but guilty pleasure. Okay, I can respect that. Heartbreak Rage, talking about Cabrini reminds me about Bonhoeffer, due out in November. Could be another hit for Angel. I hope so. Definitely excited for that one. And Lex Udendi, would you have liked Furiosa more if it didn't have a reference to Mad Max, was just standalone film? No, I wouldn't, because the biggest problems with Furiosa is the green screen. The effects look terrible. The green screen is very much overused, and everything about the film looks so artificial. It's disgusting. That's something the first film, right, Fury Road, didn't have. The Fury Road had visual effects. It had green screen. It had some CGI, but it was done in an effective enough way where there was enough actual real locations, right? There were actual real backgrounds that were going on with so many of those stunt sequences. This movie was just a shadow of anything done in Fury Road, and it, because of the artificial look, just didn't work out very well. Anyway, that's going to be it for me, everybody. So thank you all again for making this first morning stream a success. Shout out to KN Kareen. Thank you very much for that super chat. It really does mean a lot. And if you have any comments or questions, please let them know if you're watching this on the replay. Anything that you might want to know, or anything that you might have seen or heard said, or anything that needs to be followed up on, comment below in the video description. Thank you all guys for making this episode great. Next episode of the Welcome to Asgard podcast will be episode 500. No idea what I'm going to do for that. Might be giving away some movies at that point. I've got 3 movies right here that I could be giving away. Interstellar on 4K being one, The Departed on a 4K Steelbook being another, Harakiri, which is a Criterion Collection film by Masaki Kobayashi. Beautiful, beautiful film. Probably actually one of my favorite films here, with Tatsuya Nakadai in it. Phenomenal film. Tons of other movies, though. So we'll probably have a lot of giveaways for that movie. And with all that being said, I gotta go. Go check out Go check out the Wednesday morning show of Geeks and Gamers Daily. You guys are all amazing and beautiful people. Have a wonderful rest of your day. A blessed Wednesday. And as always, God bless. And now for a huge special shout out to all of my May supporters at the Chosen of Valhalla level, starting off with my Patreon supporters, Father Luca Illich, Hail to you, Father. Rosetta Ellen, check out her YouTube channel, which is Eagle Rider. And also Miss Martin Muses, check out her YouTube channel by the same name. To my Subscribe Star peeps, starting off with Matt317, check out his Twitch channel by the same name. And ZK-Man, check him out over at xtheboundaries.co. And also, lastly, to my YouTube member at the Chosen of Valhalla level, Mr. Roy, who is, of course, awesome, as all of my Chosen are amazing. If you want your name shouted out at the end of every live stream and video, make sure to check out the top link in the video description below. You can also get access to things like exclusive podcast and giveaways. I do a giveaways channel on Discord if you are a member at the Keeper of the Bifrost level and above, and a ton of other stuff. So check out more information about that in that top link below. You guys are all amazing and beautiful people. Have a wonderful rest of your day. And as always, God bless.